So Albion Online seems to be one of the few MMORPGs that isn't dying in 2025, even 8 years after launch. But what exactly is Albion, and is it worth your time in 2025? Of course, that depends on you, your preferences, your playstyle, and what you are looking for in an MMO. That's why in this video I will give you a quick overview what makes Albion unique, share my own experience with the game, and walk you through both the good and the bad. By the end of the video you will have a clear idea of whether Albion Online is something you should dive into or skip. And just to be fully transparent here, this video is sponsored by Albion Online. But as always, I'll be honest here and highlight both what the game does well and where it falls short. Let's start with combat. Now there are two things that are different to most traditional MMOs. First of all, you play Albion from an isometric perspective, like League of Legends or Diablo. And secondly, you have a classless system. Your active and passive abilities aren't tied to a class, and they are defined by the armor and weapons you equip. So in the game there are almost 90 different armor pieces and nearly 150 different weapons. And every item always comes with different ability options, both passive and active. So for example, you could have an armor piece that gives you a heal ability, or casts a wall that pushes enemies away. There are a lot of different build options possible. The combat is a mix of tap targeting and lots of free aim skill shots. Especially in PvP, you need good movement to dodge abilities and of course good aim to hit enemies. And additionally, there are a lot of stuns, knock-ups, pushbacks, but also counter abilities like cleanses and other utility skills. Having a good strategic understanding can give you a big advantage, especially in small-scale PvP. For me, the whole combat system in Albion feels a lot like League of Legends, and since I've spent way too many hours playing League, I actually enjoy the combat quite a bit. It didn't take me too long to get into it. Well, that said, for an MMORPG, the strategic combat and isometric perspective are definitely not for everyone. It's just a different feel compared to traditional MMOs, and it might take some time getting used to it, especially if you're coming from a traditional MMO. What Albion is also doing differently is that you don't level your character to get stronger. You level each individual piece of armor or weapon instead. You simply equip your armor, do any kind of content, PvE or PvP, and you gain something called fame, which is basically experience for the gear you have equipped. So compared to other MMOs, you can level all your gear relatively quick, at least if you focus on one set. The first time it took me around 20 to 30 hours to get my first weapon to max level. The good thing about this is that you can get into PvP really fast without being in a huge disadvantage. But of course, for some people that might feel like a downside since you can't really progress that one weapon any further. Okay, now you need to understand that Albion Online is a sandbox MMORPG. That means after you finish a short tutorial, you are dropped in a huge open world with a crazy player-driven ecosystem, but without any main quest or a clear path to follow. To understand this better, let's talk more in detail about the content and the world of Albion. The world is split into two continents, which are divided into hundreds of smaller zones. Now, these zones have, of course, different tiers with increasing difficulty, and they are additionally divided into 4 categories. You have got blue and yellow zones, which are your safe zones, and then red and black zones, which are your PvP zones. And in between all of those zones, you have then several main cities. Now here's the big thing. In red and black zones, full loot PvP is always on. That means if you die there, another player can take everything from you. Your gathered materials, your gear, whatever. They can use it, sell it, or do whatever they want with it. Okay, now let's dive a little bit into the content in those zones. For this, you have to understand that it doesn't matter what kind of content you want to do in Albion. You always have to head out into the open world. That's just how the game is built. Everything you can do, you find there. Okay, but what exactly can you do out there? First, of course, there's straightforward PvE content. You will find tons of dungeons out in the open world, designed for solo players, groups, or even multiple groups. In those dungeons you fight mobs, bosses, and of course get some nice loot at the end. But again, these entrances can be found in the open world. Then you have a lot of PvE content. There can be dungeons, world bosses and other events that spawn in black zones. So you are doing PvE content but in PvP zones. That means there's always a chance to get into a fight with other players. Here you've got just everything. Solo players doing 1v1s or 1v2s, groups fighting over bosses, gang squads roaming around, and of course massive Zerg versus Zerg battles for territories. This kind of open world PvP is a huge part of the game. But even if you are not into open world PvP, there's also instance 2v2, 5v5, 10 versus 10 and even 20 versus 20 PvP. And yes, some versions of those modes also have full loot on death. So yeah, that's already a lot of content. But even if PvE and PvP aren't your thing, you still got crafting and gathering, which plays a huge role in this game. But for this, we need to understand how the ecosystem works in Albion. I will give you here a quick overview, but there's honestly way more that I can cover in this short video. Okay, so the first thing you need to understand is that every item in the game is crafted. Armor, weapons, consumables, and that even includes items you find in dungeons. Every item in the game is crafted. So you've got gatherers who go out and collect raw resources, then refiners who process those resources, and finally crafters who turn them into actual items. And just like for combat, you level each of those professions individually. So for example, if you craft a lot of swords, then you get better at crafting swords. But compared to leveling your gear, crafting and gathering take a lot longer to level up. So it really helps if you specialize in a specific profession. Now, of course, you trade all your items through multiple auction houses across the world. But once again, Albion handles it in a unique way. Those auction houses are not connected. That adds a whole new layer of complexity, because you've got different prices in different cities. That means maybe you need to move goods or specific resources between cities. And that can even take you through PvP zones, where you have to consider ganking squads. And on top of that, you also got private islands for farming, workshop ownerships in cities, and more. The ecosystem in Albion is a big deal, and honestly, it's something that really sets the game apart. You become whatever you want: a gatherer, a crafter, a ganker in the open world, someone who flips items on the market, someone who transports goods from one city to another, or like my little brother who has thousands of hours in the game but never really touched crafting or gathering. He just PvP'd non-stop. But in one way or another, you will contribute to the ecosystem. And honestly, I think that's just beautiful. Now you might be wondering how solo friendly is all of that content. Well, if you're into gathering and crafting, you can absolutely play Albion completely solo and still have a really great time. The game just supports that playstyle really well. When it comes to PvE and PvP, you can enjoy a lot of it solo too. But from my experience, the content becomes way more fun if you join a guild or have a few buddies that you can play with. Now let's talk about monetization. Albion Online is a free-to-play title with an optional subscription. The sub lets you level everything in the game faster, you earn more silver, get better loot from monsters, and gather more resources. On top of that, it allows you to buy a personal island and gives you a 50% reduction on market taxes. So yeah, if you don't want to handicap yourself in terms of progression, you will probably want the sub. But the cool part is that you can buy it using the in-game currency silver. So silver is the currency you use just for everything. So if you're good at making silver, you can get the sub without ever spending real money. For some players, that's even a fun challenge. But besides that, there's also a premium currency called gold, which you can exchange for silver. So if you spend enough money, you can have unlimited silver, which of course makes it pay to win. I really don't mind the subscription, but the premium currency is just something that really annoys me. But it's 2025 and I guess we just have to live with that. Now, something that is always important when talking about MMOs is the game still alive. Albion isn't on Steam, so tracking the player base is tricky. But one tool I like to use is Google Trends. It's not perfect, but it gives you a general idea of the interest in a game over time. And you can see in 2025 the interest in Albion has stayed consistent and is even slowly growing. The game is 8 years old and more players are still getting into it. And that's pretty rare for MMOs, which honestly speaks for itself. So is Albion worth your time in 2025? Albion is doing a lot of things differently compared to other MMOs, and if you watch the whole video, you probably already know the answer yourself. Of course, that depends on what you are looking for. Do you enjoy the isometric perspective and the strategic combat? Do you like that everything happens in the open world instead of instanced content? If you're looking for another theme park MMO with traditional Mythic Plus dungeons and raids, Albion isn't that. Your goals aren't handed to you. The game gives you a huge world with a lot of points of interest, different types of content and a complex ecosystem. But you have to shape your own path in that world. So if you're interested into Albion and want to support me, then use my referral link in the video description. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe and do all those good stuff. Thanks for watching and see ya in the next one.